I was halfway through my second flute of champagne when Ethan's fingers closed around my wrist. His grip was gentle, but his face, God, his face looked like every fire alarm I've ever ignored. "Mom, we have to go. Now!" The room pulsed with string lights and curated laughter. A jazz trio noodled in the corner, like this was a hotel ballroom instead of my daughter's rented event space off the riverfront. Everywhere I looked, hydrangeas imported from somewhere too far away, linen napkins folded into swans, waiters gliding around with beef tenderloin on little porcelain boats. A bar cart sparkled with bottles I used to pick up once a year for Christmas Eve. Tonight, they were just decor. "It's Sophia's night," I whispered, forcing a smile as two of her friends air-kissed my cheeks on their way to the photo wall. "Founding day and second wedding anniversary, remember? She wanted it to feel expensive," Ethan said. "It feels expensive. It also feels wrong." He's 22 and built like the high school tight end he could have been, all coiled energy that usually comes out as jokes. Not tonight. He scanned the room, jaw tight, as if he was measuring exits. Sophia saw us and beamed. She was luminous in silk the color of champagne, one hand curled possessively around Mark's arm. He wore the satisfied smile of a man whose shoes cost more than my mortgage payment used to be. When their eyes flicked to Ethan's hand still circling my wrist, both smiles sharpened, just a millimeter. "Mom," Sophia sang, sweeping in, scent like peonies and something colder. "Are you having fun? Did you try the caviar bumps? Mark's investor friends are dying to meet you." "Maybe after I get some air," I said. "It's warm in here." Ethan's grip tightened. "We're leaving." Sophia's gaze skittered to her husband, then back to me. "You can't go yet. There's a surprise upstairs. You'll love it." Upstairs. The word landed in my stomach like a coin in a well. Small, decisive, gone. I smoothed my dress and reached for the old Midwestern reflex that had kept me polite through PTA meetings and insurance adjusters. "Sweetheart, this is beautiful, all of it. I'm proud of you." She glowed. "I told you, the brand is finally happening." She dipped her head, conspiratorial. "We have big people here tonight. Real doors are opening." Across the room, Mark clinked a glass and flashed me a practiced wink. My cheeks lifted into another smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Mom," Ethan said again, softer now. "Please." "Ethan, what is going on?" I kept my voice in the range where mothers talk through clenched teeth in the cereal aisle. "You're making a scene." "I can't tell you here." He leaned in, breath warm against my ear. "But if we stay, they're going to hurt you. Not the kind that leaves marks. The kind with paper." Paper. I thought of legal pads and forms I'd signed by the dozen during my years as a clinic manager. I thought of deeds and beneficiary lines, the way one messy signature could move a lifetime from one column to another. "This is my daughter's party," I said, but my throat felt tight. "I'm not walking out." "Then I will," Ethan said, straightening. Something in his voice, new steel, made me look up. He'd always deferred to his big sister, to her noise and plans and bright mess. Tonight, he looked like a man drawing a boundary line. Sophia slid back to us with a waiter in tow. "Another pour for my mother," she said, sugary and crisp. "Top shelf only." "I'm fine," I said. "Just a splash." She tilted the flute toward the bottle without waiting for my answer. "You're too tense, Mom. Relax. Enjoy." The bubbles caught the light, and for a second, I saw a summer day superimposed over all this glamour. My tiny kids barefoot on our cracked driveway, Sophia bossing Ethan into selling lemonade while I deadheaded roses. My throat burned. I set the glass down. "I need the restroom," I lied. "Upstairs. Sophia said instantly. The downstairs one's for staff. Ethan and I stared at each other. A beat, too. I'll manage, I said, turning toward the hallway that led to the exit instead. Mark appeared like a shadow moving faster than it should. Linda, he said smoothly, blocking the hall with one hand braced on the doorframe, like we were players and he was the referee. Don't run off. The surprise really is for you. For me? I made the question light, the way you ask a 4-year-old about the mud on their shoes. You shouldn't have. He smiled with all his teeth. We insist. Ethan stepped between us. She said she needs air. Mark's eyes flicked over Ethan, ranking him, then moving on. That look, the bored, once-over powerful men give young ones, has always made me want to throw something. My palm itched. Ethan, I said, without looking away from Mark. Get our coats. Mom? Now. He went. Mark didn't budge. You'll ruin the moment, he said pleasantly. There are people waiting. For me? I repeated, and this time I let the words sit there flat. Sophia's voice floated from behind us, higher, brittle. Mom, don't be dramatic. We planned something with the 9-piece band. Mark cut in smoothly. They can't start without the guest of honor. Notary. The syllables had been on her tongue. I felt my pulse in my lip, my thumb, the soft spots you only notice when they start to throb. Ethan returned with my coat over his arm and his car keys in his fist like a talisman. He pressed the wool into my hands, an anchor. We're leaving, he said to Mark, louder this time. The jazz trio paused between songs, and the party sound shifted. 100 small conversations, the clink of ice, the hum of money. For a heartbeat, the 4 of us, me, my children, the man my daughter married, stood at a crossroads in plain sight. Nobody saw it. I slid my arms into my coat sleeves. Sophia, I said, looking past Mark to my daughter. This is lovely. I'm proud you can throw a party like this. Her chin lifted an inch. I felt the tug in my chest that's lived there since the day she was born. And I'm leaving, I added, gentler than I felt. We'll talk tomorrow. The room tilted, not the way it does when you've had too much to drink, but the way it does when a house finally shifts and settles on a foundation you thought might crack. Ethan took my elbow. We walked. The night air outside was cool and smelled like the river. I didn't breathe until the door latched behind us. On the sidewalk, under a string of patio lights that didn't quite reach the curb, Ethan finally said what he hadn't been able to say inside. Upstairs, he murmured. There's a table with papers, and a man waiting with a briefcase. Ethan's words sank in like stones through water. Papers. A man with a briefcase. My daughter's voice echoing in my ear. The knot. Cut off by Mark's smooth lie. We walked fast toward the parking lot, my heels catching on the uneven pavement. I clutched my coat around me like it could shield me from the truth unspooling in my head. Ethan, I finally managed. What exactly did you see? He glanced over his shoulder before answering, as if the glowing windows behind us might sprout ears. When I went to grab our coats, I passed the upstairs landing. The guest room door was cracked open. Mom, there was a man in a suit sitting at a table. He had a briefcase open, and inside were folders. Legal folders. He was straightening papers like he was waiting on somebody. My stomach twisted. Waiting on me. Yeah. And guess who was whispering right outside that door? Sophia and Mark. I only caught a piece, but she said, once she's had 2 more glasses, she won't question a thing. The spring air felt suddenly sharp, every breath cutting. I slowed, one hand going to the side of my face. My daughter, my firstborn, the one I raised through chickenpox and dance recitals, the one I'd driven to job interviews in my beat-up Honda, planning to drug me with alcohol and shove legal documents under my nose. Maybe it's something else, I whispered, hearing the desperation in my own voice. Maybe. Mom, Ethan said, stopping me with a hand on my arm. I know what I heard. They want your house. They want the clinic savings Dad left. All of it. Mark was talking to those guys in suits earlier like it was already done. I looked up at the glowing building where laughter floated through the glass. My daughter was in there, laughing, clinking glasses, playing the perfect hostess while sharpening the knife for my back. For a moment, guilt tried to smother me. Had I failed her somehow? Had my careful lectures about hard work and honesty just bounced off? But then the anger came, clean and steady, like a pilot light catching flame. All right, I said, straightening my shoulders. We're leaving now, but this isn't over. That night, back home, the quiet of my little living room roared louder than any party. I sat with Ethan at the kitchen table, our mugs of tea untouched. He kept glancing at me like I might break. I should have said something earlier, he muttered. I heard them talking yesterday too, before the party. Thought maybe I misunderstood, but tonight. You did exactly what you should have done, I said, squeezing his hand. You trusted your gut. You trusted me. He blinked hard, and I realized just how much he'd been carrying, trying to keep the family from exploding. My heart ached for him, but I also felt the steel setting in my bones. If Sophia and Mark thought they could outmaneuver me with a little wine and a notary, they had forgotten who they were dealing with. I wasn't just Mom. I was a woman who'd balanced budgets, fought insurance companies, and kept a household alive on willpower alone. I'd buried a husband and still managed to keep 2 kids clothed and fed. They wanted a war? Then they'd get one. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it turned lazy circles, the shadows cutting across the room. My mind kept dragging me back, not to the glittering party, but to the long string of disasters that had led Sophia to tonight's scheme. It was like my brain had decided to pull out an old ledger, page after page of losses, debts, and disappointments, all with her name scribbled at the top. The first entry was the nail salon. She was barely 25, full of fire, telling me she'd found her independence at last. I co-signed the lease on that strip mall storefront against my better judgment, my pen shaking as it scratched across the dotted line. Just until the business builds, she'd said, and I had believed her. 6 months later, the doors were padlocked, the rent unpaid, and her silent partner had vanished with half the startup money. Then came the crypto obsession. 2017. She sat at my kitchen table with glossy eyes, showing me graphs that only went upward. It's the future, Mom, she'd insisted. If you don't invest now, you'll regret it. I didn't invest. She did. $30,000 gone in less time than it takes to watch a season of a sitcom. She never forgave me for not backing her dream, even though it had evaporated overnight. And the cafe. God, the cafe. She dragged me downtown to see the place, sunlight pouring through the wide windows onto mismatched furniture she'd found on Facebook Marketplace. For one fragile week, I almost believed she could make it work. She had the espresso machine hissing, scones lined up on trays, Ethan helping at the counter after school. Then her business partner, another smooth-talking hustler, disappeared with the vendor money, and the cafe doors never opened again. Each time she fell, she came back to me. Each time she cried about betrayal, about bad luck, about the universe being against her. And each time, I had written the check, covered the debt, smiled weakly while telling her she'd get it right next time. But tonight was different. Tonight wasn't about failure. Tonight was about calculation. I rolled over in bed, staring at the glowing digits of the alarm clock. Ethan's words replayed. Once she's had 2 more glasses, she won't question a thing. That wasn't failure. That was a plan. By morning, I felt older than my 58 years. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled open the battered shoebox where I'd kept every receipt, contract, and bounced check connected to Sophia's ventures. I never threw them away, maybe because some part of me knew this day would come. The papers smelled faintly of dust and ink. I spread them out across the table like a timeline of betrayal. The lease agreement for the nail salon, with my signature under hers. The crypto transfer confirmation, $30,000 drained into the void. The cafe partnership contract with a man who turned out to have 2 fraud convictions. Each document was a scar. Together, they were a pattern. Ethan shuffled into the kitchen, hair messy, rubbing his eyes. He stopped short when he saw the table covered in paperwork. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Building a case," I said simply. "If Sophia thinks she can strip me of everything, she needs to understand I'm not defenseless. I've carried proof of her choices for years, and if I have to use it, I will." He sat across from me, silent for a long while. Then he nodded slowly. "Good. She needs to see who she's dealing with." For the first time in a long time, I felt the balance shift. I wasn't just the mother who had bailed her out. I was the woman who had survived storms, kept the receipts, and was finally ready to draw the line. The following Saturday, I stepped outside with my coffee, ready to tend to the one sanctuary that never betrayed me: my garden. Rows of roses, marigolds, and lavender lined the backyard, the colors humming in the soft spring light. It had always been my refuge. Through years of juggling bills and grief, when everything else felt like slipping sand, I could sink my hands into the soil and believe in growth again. But that morning, something was wrong. The roses drooped like they'd been beaten in the night. Leaves were browning in strange, deliberate streaks. Whole patches of grass had turned yellow, curling up at the edges as if scorched by fire. I set my mug down so hard on the porch rail that coffee sloshed over the rim. Kneeling, I brushed my hand across the soil near the lavender bed. It was damp, but not from rain. A chemical tang rose sharp enough to sting my nose. Not drought, not pests. This was poison. I sat back on my heels, heart hammering. Someone had been here. Someone had stood in my sanctuary, under cover of dark, and poured death into the roots I'd nurtured for years, and I already knew who. Images flashed. Sophia's brittle smile at the party, Mark blocking the hallway, the words, "Once she's had 2 more glasses." My daughter had crossed a line I hadn't thought possible. I forced myself to stand, scanning the yard. On the side gate latch, faint white residue clung where no gardener's glove had touched. My gut told me it was the same chemical that had seeped into my soil. The fury was instant, white-hot, then cooled into something far more dangerous. Resolve. I would not be intimidated. That afternoon, I carried the withered leaves into the kitchen in a paper bag, setting them on the table beside the stack of Sophia's failed contracts. Evidence. Proof. Every betrayal had left me with a receipt, and this one was no different. As I bagged the dead plants tighter, my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Mom, hope you're feeling better after the party. Can you come over tomorrow? Mark and I have some things to finalize." Finalize. The word snapped like a mousetrap. I deleted the message without replying. Across from me, Ethan leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "She's not going to stop, is she?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "But neither am I." I looked at the shriveled lavender in the bag and the stack of papers documenting her history. For years, I'd tried to protect her from herself. Now I understood. I needed to protect myself from her. And for the first time, I allowed myself to think it clearly. Sophia wasn't just reckless. She was dangerous. By Monday morning, the garden incident still weighed on me like a stone. I'd walked past the blackened patches of soil 3 times before heading inside, each time promising myself I wouldn't cry. But the sight of it, my safe place, ruined, was like a message scrawled in acid. You're not safe here anymore. The phone rang just as I was folding laundry. I didn't recognize the number, but the moment I heard Sophia's bright, sing-song voice, my jaw clenched. "Mom! Perfect timing!" she chirped, as if nothing had happened between us. "Mark and I are planning something special this weekend, and of course, you're the guest of honor." I sat down hard on the edge of the couch. "Another party? You just had one." "Oh, this isn't just a party," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing some glittering secret. "It's a celebration. 2 years married, 1 year since our company's soft launch, and now, our expansion." I could almost see her sweeping gestures on the other end, champagne glass in hand. "Expansion?" I echoed. "Yes, we've secured new investors. Big ones. And they'll all be there. It's going to be elegant, refined, the kind of night people talk about." She paused, then softened her tone. "It would mean the world if you'd come, Mom. We want you to be part of this milestone." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Sophia, last week's party looked like it cost more than a wedding. How are you paying for all this?" "Oh, don't worry about that." Her laugh was airy, dismissive. "Mark has connections. Besides, appearances matter. You should know that better than anyone. You always taught me presentation is everything." Presentation. I'd said those words once when she was 12, teaching her to iron her school uniform. She'd twisted them now, weaponized them. "I don't think I began, but she cut me off. "Mom, Ethan's coming. We've already told him. It would crush me if you didn't show." My pulse ticked in my throat. If Ethan had agreed, it was only because he didn't want to tip his hand. He knew what they were capable of now. Still, I couldn't ignore the bait. She wanted me there badly, too badly. "Fine," I said, keeping my tone flat. "When and where?" Her voice brightened instantly. "Saturday at the Riverstone Club, 6 sharp, black tie. Don't be late. We have a surprise planned for you." The word surprise sent a chill crawling up my arms. I ended the call quickly, staring at the silent phone in my hand. Another surprise. Another stage set with glitter and glass. And beneath it, I could already feel the trap's steel jaws waiting. That evening, Ethan dropped by. I told him about the invitation, about Sophia's excitement, about the word expansion. He listened, jaw tightening. "She's doubling down. After you left the last party, she probably realized she has to try harder, make the show bigger, the pressure stronger. She wants me cornered," I said quietly. He met my eyes. "So don't go." I hesitated. If I don't show up, she'll spin it as me being bitter or ungrateful. And if I do go, they'll try again. He finished. The silence stretched between us, heavy with all the history neither of us wanted to say out loud. Finally, I exhaled. "Then I'll go," I said, pushing the words out like stones. "But this time, Ethan, we're ready." Saturday evening, the Riverstone Club glowed like a palace on the riverbank. Its tall glass windows shimmered in the twilight, chandeliers blazing inside, spilling golden light across the manicured lawn. My heels clicked against the marble steps as Ethan steadied my arm, his tuxedo collar slightly crooked. "Mom," he muttered as we reached the entrance. "Remember what we talked about. Smile. Blend in. but don't drink anything you didn't open yourself." I patted his hand, grateful for his steady presence. "Don't worry. I didn't survive 30 years of marriage and every bill collector in this state to fold now." Inside, the air was thick with perfume and money. A string quartet played near a fountain where waiters floated by with trays of oysters and champagne. Guests in sequined gowns and tailored suits mingled, speaking in the smooth tones of people who spent their lives negotiating deals. And there was Sophia at the center of it all. She looked radiant, her silk gown cut perfectly to catch the light, her smile sharp enough to slice glass. Mark stood beside her like a co-king, hand resting possessively at her waist, his own tuxedo tailored to perfection. "Mom!" she cried, sweeping toward me. Her arms encircled me in a hug that smelled faintly of expensive wine. "You came? You look stunning." "I came," I said evenly, pulling back to study her. "This is quite a crowd. Only the best," she said, eyes glittering. "Tonight is about showing the world who we are, who our family is." Family. The word stung more than it soothed. Mark appeared then, pressing a glass of red into my hand without asking. "Vintage Bordeaux, Linda. You'll love it." I set it down on a passing tray without tasting. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes flickered just for a moment. As the evening unfolded, I let myself wander through the rooms, cataloging the excess. Caviar pyramids, hand-rolled cigars, crystal centerpieces taller than some of the guests. All of it screamed wealth, but I knew the truth. Sophia and Mark didn't have this kind of money. Ethan leaned close at one point, murmuring, "See the way she keeps checking her watch? She's waiting for something." I nodded. Across the room, Sophia laughed too loudly at an investor's joke, then leaned to whisper in Mark's ear. He gave a tiny nod toward the staircase. The same trick, I thought bitterly. Different stage. Later, as the main course was served, Sophia stood to make a toast. The room quieted as she lifted her glass high. "To growth," she said, her voice clear and commanding. "To family, and to the future we're all building together." Glasses clinked. Applause thundered. I clapped once, softly, then let my hands fall to my lap. Ethan caught my eye across the table. His expression said what I was already thinking. Whatever trap they had laid tonight, it was coming soon. I sat straighter, the old familiar steel settling into my spine. I had walked into their palace, yes, but I wasn't the prey they thought I was. Dessert plates clinked softly as servers cleared them away, the murmur of polished voices filling the cavernous hall. A jazz pianist had taken over for the quartet, each note winding like smoke through the chandeliers. It was the kind of moment meant to lull guests into soft smiles and looser wallets. But Ethan wasn't smiling. I noticed him return from the hall bathroom, face pale, shoulders squared like he was bracing for impact. He leaned down, whispering low into my ear so only I could hear. "They've got a room upstairs again," he said. "This time it's the library. I saw Mark and two men in suits carrying a stack of folders. Not party guests, Mom. Lawyers." My stomach tightened, but I kept my smile frozen as Sophia floated over, eyes bright, cheeks flushed with victory. She slipped an arm around me, squeezing a little too tightly. "Mom, come with me," she said sweetly. "We've prepared something special for you. You'll love it." Ethan stepped in quickly, tone sharp enough to cut glass. "She's not going anywhere." Sophia's smile twitched. "Don't be ridiculous, Ethan. This is part of the evening." He shook his head. "Part of the trap, you mean." For a flicker of a moment, I saw her mask slip, eyes narrowing, lips pressing thin. But then she laughed, the sound high and brittle. "Honestly, Mom, you've let Ethan fill your head with nonsense. We're celebrating. You deserve to be recognized for everything you've done. Recognition. Another word wrapped in velvet but hiding thorns. Sweetheart, I said gently, though my pulse was pounding. If you truly want to honor me, then let me enjoy the evening right here. No more surprises. Sophia's hand tightened on my arm. Too tight. It won't take long, just upstairs. That's when Ethan did something I'll never forget. He reached across, pried her fingers from my arm, and said loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. Mom isn't signing a single thing tonight, Sophia. Not a deed, not a transfer. Nothing. The words landed like a dropped plate in the room. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Mark froze halfway across the floor, his glass of whiskey raised midair. Sophia's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked young again, not radiant or powerful, but cornered. Ethan, she hissed, eyes flashing. You don't understand? No? I cut in, standing slowly, my chair scraping against the marble. He understands perfectly, and so do I. The silence around us thickened, guests pretending to sip their drinks but clearly straining to catch every word. I glanced toward the staircase where two men in suits lingered like shadows waiting for their cue. My chest burned with the realization. This was it. The moment they'd been working toward all along. But I wasn't going to walk into their net. I'm leaving, I said, reaching for my clutch. Ethan, let's go. Sophia's breath hitched, desperation sharpening her voice. Mom, please, just hear us out. But I was already turning toward the exit, Ethan at my side. Behind us, the party's hum rose again, 100 voices buzzing with speculation. I knew by morning, rumors would ripple through every social circle in town. And maybe that was a blessing. Because tonight, the mask had slipped, and the truth had teeth. The cool night air wrapped around us like a lifeline as the Riverstone Club's heavy doors shut behind. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. Ethan hailed a cab, his hand shaking slightly as he waved at the driver. We slid into the back seat, the city lights streaking past, as if trying to erase the evening from memory. For several blocks, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, not with anger, but with something heavier. Confirmation. We weren't imagining things. Sophia's intentions had been laid bare, if only for a moment. Finally, Ethan exhaled sharply. Mom, I need to tell you everything I heard, not just tonight, yesterday too. I turned to him, my heart pounding again. Go on. At the club earlier, before dinner, I went upstairs to find the restroom. The door to the library was cracked open. Mark was inside with two men in suits. Lawyers, I'm sure of it. They had a stack of papers spread across the table, and I heard Mark say, Once she signs, the transfer is final. The house, the savings, everything. The words struck me like cold water. Transfer. The house. Everything. And yesterday? Ethan continued, voice low. I was at Sophia's place. She didn't know I was in the kitchen, and I heard her on the phone with Mark. She said, Mom will cave. She always does. She trusts me too much. I closed my eyes, pain twisting through me. She knew my weakness. I had spent years rescuing her, smoothing her disasters, writing checks to keep her afloat. To her, that wasn't sacrifice. It was opportunity. She's not the same person anymore, Mom, Ethan said. His voice cracked, and I realized how much this betrayal hurt him too. I mean, maybe she never was. But tonight proved it. They were ready. They thought they had you cornered. I swallowed hard, staring out the cab window at the dark stretch of river. Not anymore. When we got home, the house felt different, like it had been waiting for me to finally acknowledge the war brewing inside my family. I dropped my clutch on the counter and sank into a chair. The shoebox of old receipts and contracts still spread across the table where I'd left it days ago. Ethan sat opposite me, running a hand through his hair. What now? I looked at the papers, at the wilted lavender sealed in the paper bag, at the memory of Sophia's grip on my arm and Mark's smooth voice promising a surprise. What now? I said slowly, is that we stop playing defense. We stop waiting for their next move. It's time I make mine. Ethan nodded. Do you have a plan? A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I've been saving one for years. I just never thought I'd use it against my own daughter. I leaned forward, tapping the pile of contracts with one finger. She's forgotten something important. Every failed venture, every scam, every bad deal she pulled me into, I kept proof. And if she wants to play dirty, then I'll show her what consequences really look like. Ethan's eyes widened. Then slowly, a look of relief, maybe even pride, spread across his face. She has no idea who she's messing with. No, I said softly, but she's about to find out. The next morning, I carried my mug of coffee out to the porch, the weight of last night's confrontation still pressing on my chest. The garden stretched before me like a battlefield, patches of yellowed grass and dying roses standing as grim reminders. I didn't notice Mr. George at first. He was perched on his own porch next door, watering his hanging ferns with the same care I once gave my lavender. He raised a hand in greeting. Mornin', Linda. His voice was gravelly, softened by age and too many cigarettes. I forced a small smile. Mornin'. He hesitated, then set the watering can down. You know, I wasn't sure if I should bring this up, but I saw something the other night. Thought you might want to know? My pulse jumped. I turned fully toward him. What did you see? Wednesday night, he said slowly. Around 10. I was out here, couldn't sleep. That's when I noticed someone slipping into your yard through the side gate. He leaned forward on the railing. It was Sophia. The name dropped between us like a stone in still water. I thought maybe she was surprising you with something, but she wasn't carrying flowers? He shook his head. She had a plastic jug. Saw her pour it right at the base of your roses. Took her time, too. Looked around after, then walked back to her car like nothing happened. I gripped the porch railing, my knuckles whitening. The confirmation hurt more than the suspicion. My daughter had destroyed the one place I'd always considered sacred. Not by accident, deliberately. Are you certain, George? My voice came out rougher than I intended. Linda, I've known that girl since she was in diapers. It was her. He sighed. Didn't want to interfere, but when I saw the state of your garden yesterday, well, it didn't feel right keeping quiet. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thank you. I needed to hear it. He nodded. If you ever need me to back you up, I will. Folks need to know what she's become. As he turned back to his ferns, I stood frozen on my porch, coffee cooling in my hands. It wasn't just failed businesses or whispered schemes anymore. This was war, and she had declared it first. Inside, I laid the coffee mug beside the pile of contracts, the bag of poison lavender, and now, George's testimony echoing in my head. Piece by piece, the puzzle was forming, and it painted a picture of my daughter I could no longer ignore. I whispered into the empty room, as much to myself as to the walls that had seen me raise her. All right, Sophia, you wanted a fight. You've got one. By Monday morning, my kitchen table looked less like a place for breakfast and more like a war room. The shoebox of receipts had been emptied. Contracts, bounced checks, bank statements, they were spread out in neat piles, each one telling the same story. Sophia's trail of failures, each one deeper than the last. I ran my fingers across them, feeling the texture of every broken promise. The nail salon lease, with my signature right below hers. The crypto transfer printout, money vanishing into thin air. The cafe contract with that partner, who'd already been sued twice for fraud. All of it in black and white. This time, I wasn't just keeping them as reminders. I was weaponizing them. Ethan stood across from me, sipping coffee, eyes narrowed as he studied the battlefield of paper. So, what's the plan? I took a long breath. Step 1. Let the people she's burned know the full story. They deserve to see exactly how many bridges she set on fire. Marcus from the cafe, Irene from the salon, even that crypto group she duped online. If they start talking, Sophia's credibility in this town is gone. He nodded slowly, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. That's actually brilliant. And step 2? Mark, I said, letting the name sit heavy between us. He's the one giving her confidence. He's the one setting up the lawyers, feeding the fantasy of easy money. But I know where he works, Pinnacle Finance, and if half of what I've heard about his backroom dealings is true, his reputation can't survive scrutiny. Ethan set down his mug, leaning forward. So you hit them both at the same time. Exactly. Sophia loses her standing in the community. Mark loses his career footing, and together, they lose the illusion that they can control me. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock. Then Ethan smiled, not the nervous, boyish smile I was used to, but something steadier. Mom, they have no idea who they picked to fight with. I smiled back, but there was no joy in it, just resolve. They thought I was weak because I loved her. But love isn't weakness, Ethan. It's what's giving me the strength to finally stop her. That afternoon, I made 3 calls. Each one was careful, precise, delivered with the same even tone I once used with insurance adjusters. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I simply said, I thought you'd want to see this, and arranged to send the documents. Facts speak louder than my grief ever could. By evening, the envelopes were sealed and ready for courier pickup. Each one contained photocopies of contracts, receipts, and my simple cover note. For your consideration, please review the attached records of Sophia Meyer's business dealings. Draw your own conclusions. No accusations, no pleading. Just truth, in black and white. When the courier truck pulled away with the envelopes, I felt something uncoil in my chest. For years, I had carried Sophia's failures in silence, covering for her, cleaning up after her. Now, I was letting the world see what I had carried all along. And as the sun sank outside, painting the garden in bruised colors, I knew this was only the beginning. It was late Tuesday afternoon when the pounding started on my front door. Not the polite kind of knock neighbors use, but the heavy, furious rhythm of people who wanted in. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Sophia's voice came first, high and tight with anger. Mom, open this door right now! Then Mark, lower, colder. Linda, we know what you've been doing. Don't make this worse. I exhaled slowly, the way I used to before calling insurance companies that had denied a claim. Calm, steady. I turned the lock and opened the door. They stormed in without waiting. Sophia's heels clattered against the hardwood, her face blotchy with rage. Mark followed close, his jaw clenched, eyes darting like a man already calculating damage control. You destroyed us! Sophia spat, spinning toward me. Those envelopes you sent? Do you have any idea what you've done? I shut the door gently, almost tenderly, before answering. I didn't destroy you. I simply shared the truth. Mark jabbed a finger at me. Marcus called. Irene called. Half the people in this town are whispering about Sophia now. Do you realize the damage you've caused? Investors are pulling out. My firm received inquiries about my integrity. This could ruin my career. I walked past them to the living room, settling into my old armchair, the one that had molded to my shape over decades. From here, I faced them like a judge listening to defendants. Your choices ruined your careers. All I did was stop covering for you. Sophia's face twisted, hurt mingling with fury. You're my mother. You were supposed to support me, not sabotage me. Support? My voice cracked, but I steadied it. I supported you when I co-signed that lease. I supported you when I paid off your cafe's debts. I supported you every time you begged for one more chance. And what did you do with that support, Sophia? You turned it into weapons to use against me. Her mouth opened, but I raised a hand to stop her. I know about the party, the notary upstairs, the papers. Ethan heard you? I know about the chemicals in my garden. George saw you. Do not stand here and pretend you didn't try to take everything from me. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the ticking clock on the mantel. Sophia's shoulders sagged for a heartbeat, guilt flickering. But then Mark stepped forward, his voice sharp. Linda, you think you're clever, but this is family. You can't just go around airing dirty laundry and expect there won't be consequences. I leaned back, meeting his gaze evenly. You're right. There will be consequences. For both of you. Sophia's eyes filled, whether from rage or shame I couldn't tell. You've turned Ethan against me. You've destroyed your own daughter. No, Sophia, I said softly. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided stealing from your own mother was easier than building something honestly. For the first time since walking in, they had no words. Just two people, stripped of their masks, realizing their game was over. Get out, I said, pointing toward the door. Leave my house. Leave my life. I won't be your safety net anymore. Sophia's lip trembled. Mark pulled her toward the door, muttering under his breath. They left without another word, their shadows stretching across the porch before vanishing into the fading light. I stood in the doorway until their car disappeared down the street, the silence of my home settling heavy around me. But this time, the silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. The house felt cavernous after they left, as if their shouting had rattled something loose in the walls. For years I had lived in fear of Sophia's crises, her phone calls at midnight, her desperate pleas for another check, another loan, another rescue. And I always gave in, because that's what mothers do. But tonight, for the first time, I realized I had stopped being afraid. 2 days later, the phone started ringing, not from Sophia, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Marcus, the cafe investor. Irene, the woman who'd co-signed the nail salon contract. Even a man from the crypto group Sophia had once paraded around like family. Each one of them thanked me for sharing the truth. Each one said the same thing in different words. We thought we were the only ones. Now, we know better. By the weekend, word had spread. Sophia's name was no longer attached to visionary entrepreneur or up-and-coming businesswoman. It was whispered in the same sentences as con artist and fraud. Investors pulled out. Clients canceled contracts. Whatever empire she thought she was building crumbled into dust. Mark didn't escape either. Pinnacle Finance announced an internal ethics review. His smiling face, once plastered on glossy brochures, vanished from their website overnight. By Monday, rumors swirled he'd been placed on indefinite leave. And me? I sat in my garden, hands deep in the ruined soil, planning where to plant fresh lavender. A neighbor stopped by with seedlings. Ethan knelt beside me, dirt under his fingernails, sweat on his forehead. Together, we replanted what Sophia had tried to kill. Feels good, doesn't it? He asked, patting the soil around a young rosebush. I nodded, wiping my brow. Better than I expected. It's like breathing again. He leaned back on his heels, looking at me with that same steady gaze he'd carried since the first night he pulled me from the Riverstone Club. Mom, you didn't just save yourself. You saved me too. You showed me we don't have to keep letting her drag us down. Tears stung my eyes, but this time they weren't from grief. I only did what any mother would do, protect what's left worth protecting. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised pink and gold, the phone rang again. This time it was Sophia. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice cracked through the machine. Mom, please, you don't understand. I just wanted a chance. I didn't mean... I pressed delete without listening to the rest. Because I did understand. I understood perfectly. She had chosen greed over family, deceit over love. And now she was learning the lesson life had been trying to teach her all along. Every action carries weight, and sooner or later, it comes crashing down. I poured myself a glass of iced tea, carried it out to the porch, and watched Ethan laugh with our neighbor across the fence. For the first time in years, the air felt clear. 40 years of work, of sacrifice, of building this home and this family. It hadn't been taken from me. It was still mine. And more importantly, the one child who had stood by me, who had chosen truth over lies, was still by my side. I lifted my glass to the fading sky, whispering words only the evening air could hear. Justice isn't revenge, it's accountability, and finally, we have it.